Hi everyone, good morning. Welcome to Gnan Cloud Garage. In this session, I'm going to talk about how do we deliver a modern data protection solution architecture design for Kubernetes platforms. So before discussing the solution architecture design, here is the agenda and we can talk about some basic concepts and then I will show you the modern data protection solution architecture design specifically for Kubernetes platforms. Okay, so the first point is what are the Kubernetes challenges and solutions, and what are the Zerto for Kubernetes in short form Z4K, and what Zerto for Kubernetes is bringing to the table, and how do we deliver a modern data production solution architecture design for Kubernetes platforms, and what are the Zerto for Kubernetes architectural components. Okay, and Zerto, as we know, Zerto is a Hewlett Packard Enterprise Company, a HPE organization, and Kubernetes platforms, there are plenty of Kubernetes platforms in our current market. So one is Kubernetes open source one, and we also have enterprise grade Kubernetes. Suppose if you are using any of the public cloud like a Google Cloud platform, the containerization Kubernetes platform name is Google Kubernetes Engine, in short form GKE. And similarly for Azure Cloud, we are using AKS, Azure Kubernetes Service. And for Amazon AWS, we are using EKS, Elastic Kubernetes Service. And for Red Hat, we are using Red Hat OpenShift. This is also enterprise Kubernetes platform. And when it comes to the VMware, this is the icon for VMware vSphere with Tanzu or VCF on Tanzu. Any Tanzu is considered as a enterprise Kubernetes platform. Okay, so let's try to familiarize these icons. Okay, now let's start with the first point. What are the Kubernetes challenges and solutions? So I'm just trying to highlight the three key challenges. So first one is limited backup and recovery. Limited backup and recovery means normally in our traditional backups, it will support only for the system full image backup, file system backup, and also it will help us to take a file and folder recovery backup. But in this scenario, our specific Kubernetes platforms or containerization platforms are not similar like our traditional applications, like a tier-based application or monolithic application. These Kubernetes architectures consist of a microservice-based architectures. So this architecture, normal traditional backup tools, it will not support because Kubernetes include some high availability natively, but very limited disaster recovery and no data production. So that is one challenge. And another challenge, lack of purpose built protection, and existing solutions use legacy technologies such as snapshot. But Kubernetes containerization platforms, snapshot is not recommended and even snapshot is not supported. So we need a separate solution and no application centric approach. So persistent data must be protected and so must all related resource configs and services. Generally, whatever we have the backup tools all are in a traditional approach only. It's supported for a physical server backup and virtualization environment, but it's not for a microservice based architecture applications. Okay, so that is the key challenges. So to provide a solution, Zerto introduced a Zerto for Kubernetes. That is the only solution to address all these challenges. And also Zerto is nominated and also recognized as a CNCF Silver member. So CNCF means Cloud Native Computing Foundation, and Zerto for Kubernetes, Z4K, is one of the Silver members. Okay, and now we'll talk about what is the Zerto for Kubernetes. Okay, so Zerto for Kubernetes means in short form, Z4K. Z4K is focused on continuous data protection, CDP, and it is offering backup, disaster recovery, and long-term retention services of next generation application. Next generation application means Kubernetes only. Next generation application that use persistent data, regardless of whether they are running on premises or in cloud or mix of both. So some are mix of both means it's a kind of multiple public cloud or hybrid cloud. Okay. And So as we know, the container platforms, enterprise grade Kubernetes platforms are Amazon EKS, Azure AKS, Google Kubernetes Engine, and we have IBM Kubernetes in service. In short form, we call it as IKS, Red Hat OpenShift, and VMware Tanzu. So these all the platforms, Zerto for Kubernetes backup and data protection is supported. Okay, maybe we may expect other Kubernetes platforms like HPE, Ismeral, and Suzy Rancher. These tools, maybe the Zerto future versions, we may expect it will also support. Okay, so most of the popular Kubernetes platforms, Zerto for Kubernetes compatible. Okay, and what are Zerto for Kubernetes is bringing to the table? So the main key highlights of the Zerto for Kubernetes product is I'm just highlighting few key points. Okay, the first one is continuous data protection for any application, any cloud, and any threat. Okay, and application centric, protect the Kubernetes. K8 means Kubernetes, so protect the Kubernetes application rather than simple PV means it's a kind of pre-configured virtual machines or persistent volumes or underlying virtual machines only. Apart from this, this product is supported for Kubernetes applications as well. And another one is simple workflows, so recovery and orchestration workflows for point in time restorations. Okay, so using Zerto for Kubernetes, RPO is in seconds and RTO is in minutes. And hybrid and multi-cloud native support for Kubernetes environments, whether on-premises data center or in the cloud or both. Okay, and deep analytics, so centralized view of our entire environment to monitor performance and protection. And in addition, APIs and automation, even if you want to automate, simplify operations and protections for developers and DevOps engineers. Okay, development and operations engineers. And last but not the least, another key highlight point is data protection as code. So purpose built for Kubernetes with a declarative management of backup and disaster recovery. Okay, these are all the main key highlights and key features when we are using a Zerto for Kubernetes. Okay, now it's the time to discuss about how to how do we deliver a modern data protection solution architecture design for Kubernetes platforms. So whatever we discussed about multiple enterprise grade Kubernetes, all these platforms in this architecture design is common. Okay, so for our easy understanding, I'm taking the two clusters. So production cluster, DR cluster. Production cluster means it may be running within our production site and DR cluster is running in a disaster recovery site. So within our both clusters, we can use any of the enterprise grade Kubernetes platforms. So this architecture is common, but when you are presenting the architecture to your customer, depends on your Kubernetes platform. You can keep only specific logo and remove the other logos. Okay, so just for our easy understanding, I took the multiple logos here. So one is AKS, Azure Kubernetes Service, and IBM Cloud Service IKS, and also we have AWS EKS, Elastic Kubernetes Service, Red Hat OpenShift, and also the open source Kubernetes. So any icon you can use depends on your architecture design. And let's say we have a Kubernetes control plane and the master nodes are running on both clusters. And when we have a master node or control plane node, it is also required a production workloads. The production workloads are running on a worker nodes. So these worker nodes may consist of production pods. So it may have multiple. Pod means it consists of minimally one container or multiple containers is nothing but a pod. So worker node have a not only one pod, multiple pods within a worker node, and same like in our DR cluster, and even for the other worker nodes also may maintain multiple pods on both clusters. Okay, and in order to store all our pods data, we require a physical storage. That physical storage can be either we can use traditional SAN storage, iSCSI or NAS, or you can also use for a software defined storages. Software defined storages means you can use either a you can use virtual SAN or you can use Nutanix, AOS, or you can Nutanix HCI, hyperconverged infrastructure storage, or you can also use the other flavors like virtual volumes, and we can also use the Skeleton Ring, Skeleton Ateska, any of the storage devices we can use as a software defined as a storage. Okay, but in general, it's subjected to be customer choice. They can choose the respective storages. Either it is a traditional SAN or they may go for any of the HCI solution. Okay, so once we started using this environment, at the end of the day, we have to protect all our enterprise Kubernetes pods data. To protect all your data, we need a solution. That solution is called Zerto for Kubernetes. So in order to configure the Zerto for Kubernetes, same like our production cluster, DR cluster, we can also configure the Zerto cluster. This Zerto cluster, it is a flexible architecture. You can configure this Zerto cluster on any of the site. You can run it on production, you can run it on DR, or you can run it on any of the other remote site. Okay, but when we are installing a Zerto cluster, it requires mainly two key components. The first primary component is Zerto Kubernetes Manager. In short form, we call it as ZKM. So ZKM is one of the primary component, and along with the ZKM, we are installing a key clock. This key clock also acts as a IDM, Identity Access Management. Okay, and ZKM, same like our production Kubernetes master nodes or control plane nodes, how it will have the co- container storage and all. Same way, even ZKM also consists of a container and also the database, and we can access through API management DB and command line access is available for this ZKM. Okay, and Keylock also have a database and container, same like our existing Kubernetes platform worker nodes and master nodes. Okay, and to access the ZKM from the production cluster, we can use the ZKM proxy. This is the another component using ZKM proxy. That means Zerto Kubernetes Manager proxy. We can access our production cluster to ZKM, and ZKM proxy is minimally required within the site. And at least the one production cluster must have a ZKM proxy, and even DR cluster if you have a Kubernetes environment. When we going for a Zerto for Kubernetes solution, we also need a ZKM proxy on DR cluster. So minimally, each cluster have one ZKM proxy to communicate between production cluster to DR and also the production cluster to ZKM manager. That means Zerto Kubernetes manager. Okay, and then apart from this, we also need a additional component that is called VRA, virtual replication appliances. It has to be installed on all the worker nodes. Okay, it's a lightweight installation only, and we no need to install VRA anything on a pods, existing production pods. We no need to install, because without interrupting the production environment and also the specific pod environment, we are using a separate component is VRA, virtual replication appliance. This virtual replication appliance data is completely replicated to the DR cluster, and even our production data replicating through VRA, virtual replication appliances is the mediator to replicate all our production data replicating to the DR cluster. Okay, and this destination DR cluster is VRA is considered as a replication appliance specifically for journals. Okay, so in case of any of the data is corrupted within our production pod, we can able to recover using the replication option appliance journal. It will helps to recover to the production environment. Okay, and in order to establish the communication between production and DR cluster between the VRA, we are using the port HTTPS hypertext transfer protocol, and the port number is 443. Okay, and here is the high level solution architecture design for Kubernetes platforms. Suppose when you are presenting the solution architecture design for specific to AKS, you can remove the remaining logos and the architecture is still same. And even Zerto for Kubernetes platform, the main components are I highlighted in red color. The components include Zerto Kubernetes Manager JKM, Keylog, and virtual replication appliance, and ZKM proxies. Okay, these are the key components in our solution architecture design. Okay, hope you understand. Let's move on to the next point. What are the Zerto for Kubernetes architecture components? So as I mentioned, this architecture component, whatever the highlighted in red color are the key components. One specific additional component is key clock. Okay, so those four components I highlighted here. And the key point here is within the architecture components, as a native Kubernetes application, and in our native Kubernetes application, Zerto runs on our clusters as set of pods, okay, and services, daemons, etc. And usually this will be in its own namespace to keep separation from our other resources. Okay, it's not disturbing our existing production pods. It's have a separate setup. Okay, and the architecture components involves ZKM, which is highlighted here, and the key clock, this is also highlighted, and ZKM proxy, and another component is VRES. And VRE is not the one, every cluster have a, every worker node have one VRA, virtual replication appliance. So that's why I mentioned multiple VREs. Okay, now let's understand the each component one by one. I'm in this slide, it's talking about ZKM Keylock to architectural components. So where to deploy Zerto is entirely that to the customer's choice. And the control plane called ZKM, Zerto Kubernetes Manager, can be deployed within the production cluster, or you can run it on DR, or it is on any of the other secondary cluster. Okay, it's subjected to be customer's choice. Wherever the resources are available, there you can run the Zerto cluster. And with the ZKM, we also deploy Keycloak, a leading solution for identity and access management. Okay, and to install ZKM, it is easy as pulling from helm, HELM helm, and configuring a couple of key variables either on the CLI command line interface, or you can also configure via AML code. Okay, yet another markup language. And we will only need one ZKM and keylock instance, since these are Zerto wide deployments no matter the platform, either it is on premises, private cloud, public cloud, or multi-cloud. Wherever you want, you can run this cluster. And cluster comes with JKM and key clock components. Okay, and now the additional components we can verify now. And the additional components is JKM proxy. That means Zerto Kubernetes Manager proxy. On each cluster, so production and DR, each cluster, we also have ZKM proxy that interfaces with the central ZKM. Okay, and the ZKM proxies are the replication engines themselves. Okay, now another component, VREs, or we call it as VRA pods. The VRA pods with their journals and replicas. See, journals and replicas. These are the real powerhouses behind Zerto's continuous data protection, and the reason we will see 5 to 15 seconds RPOs with Zerto. And like all Zerto components, these VRAs are lightweight. Okay, these VRA, all the VRAs, whatever we have the here in the diagram, we have a 4 VRAs. All these VRAs are very lightweight and add almost no overhead to our production nodes. Okay, so hope you understand the architectural diagram and also the architectural components. Okay, in the next session, I will show you how to install the ZKM and how we can take the backup using the Kubernetes backup. The lab portion I will show you in the next session. Okay, so that's it for today. If you are watching this video, please do view, like, share, and subscribe to my channel, Gnan Cloud Garage. If you are already subscribed, I appreciate all your support. Bye for now.